And thank you for tuning in today. We are live with another episode of Sustainability Now to talk about the Careers Network program and to share with you some tips on how to build a strong CV and how to get noticed by potential employers. Please note that this session will be open for your comments, so kindly let us use the chat and send us your questions. But I want to remind you that this is not a platform for complaint, not related to the session, and also no job opportunities within Emirates NBD. So before we start, I actually wanted to give you a bit of an introduction about Careers Network and Emirates NBD commitment. So Emirates NBD has been advocating for the inclusion of people of determination in the society for quite a long time. So through the bank commitment platform called Together Limitless, Emirates NBD strongly advocate to support and promote the inclusion of people with disabilities in our community. So you may be aware that the bank has been working towards transforming our banks, making them disability-friendly branches, but also supporting people of determination to find employment. So in 2016, the bank launched the Careers Network program, which is a CSR program in partnership with Menzil and CDA, the Community Development Authority. And the Careers Network program is actually connecting individuals with disabilities to employers that are interested in bringing diversity into their own workforces. So as well as providing equal access to employment, the program is actually providing support to future employees, but also employers with the right tools and skills to succeed. So if you are looking for meaningful employment, please reach out to the team via our Careers Network website page on Emirates NBD, and please submit your contact details. So today, as I was saying, we're here to support the audience with employability skills and to discuss one of the most critical parts of job hunting, which is building your CV. At the end of the session, please visit our website and download for free the document that we are going to take you through today, which will be 1, a CV template, and 2 will be a tip sheet. So now I would like to introduce you to our HR partner and expert from Emirates NBD, Sarah Nabil, who will actually be giving us some tips and do's and don'ts when it comes to building your professional CV.
Okay, thank you, Elodie. Ramadan Kareem to everyone watching this afternoon. So the session we have today is to assist people who are just coming into the workforce on preparing their first CV, and also for people who are already employed on how to amend or review their CV based on best practices. So as Elodie said, the aim of the Career Network is for people of determination. And though these tips can apply to general candidates, some of the recommendations that we have may be tailored more towards people of determination.
Thank you, Sarah, and welcome today. Also, we have Chris in the bottom right to actually translate for anyone with hearing impairments. So just before we start, for any new joiners, I again want to mention that this is not a platform for complaints, nor job opportunities within Emirates NBD. So let's kick on with this session today. So we now have live the CV templates that Sarah have put together. So Sarah, I've got a few questions for you. Building a CV sometimes feels a bit difficult and overwhelming, where we don't really know what to include. So, but before we discuss the formats and content, can you just tell the audience why a CV is important? What is a CV, and how important is a CV for HR?
Okay, sure, Elodie. So employers receive hundreds of CVs per day, and the only information that a recruiter knows about a candidate at this point is on that piece of information. So a candidate may be extremely qualified for a role, but he or she might not get to the interview stage simply because their resume is not well articulated or it doesn't show their personality and experience very well. Therefore, a strong CV will ensure that you stand out from the crowd and hopefully help them get through to the first screening stage.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you. So let's start now with general tips. Can you share with us some general tips when it comes to, I would say, the layout of the CV?
Okay, so we're going to go through a template of a CV and discuss our recommendations for each category under the CV. So we'll begin with some of the tips. It should not be longer than 2 pages. So when you're writing your experience, we advise to try and summarize your previous job roles. In terms of formatting, we recommend certain fonts like Arial, Times New Roman, and Calibri. So a candidate needs to also make sure that the font size that they use is not too big or too small. So we recommend something between 10 and 11. And to ensure that there's different font sizes for each headings and the different sections of the resume in order to differentiate the information and guide the reader. A few final tips would be to ensure that your text is always aligned and to run a spell check to avoid any misspelling errors.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. So just one thing that I wanted to tell the audience, and I just mentioned that earlier, again, on the website, on the Careers Network website page, we have already uploaded the CV template, but also a summary of Sarah's tips today. So, Sarah?
Yeah. So we can begin with the personal information, which should be the first section of your CV. So information that should go in this category should be your nationality, a valid phone number, and an email address. So we advise that you avoid sharing too much of your personal information, such as passport number, EID number. This doesn't add a lot of value. So we try to keep the information minimal to your email, phone number, and address. So for the email address, we would advise that you ensure you have a professional address. If you don't have one, then try and create one that has your first and last name. Since you are going to be applying for a professional role, then we advise to avoid any nicknames in that email. Additionally, a question that we always get is if a photo is necessary on your CV. And in most cases, a photo is not necessary for many roles, but if you want to add your photo, just make sure that it's a professional one, like one you would use on your Emirates ID or passport or any official document. And an additional tip is that you can also add the disabilities that you have in this section. Yeah?
Yeah, so I think on this point, I just want to say we always see a lot of CVs where some people with disabilities would have it at the top or at the bottom. So as Sarah mentioned, I think it is pretty optional, but definitely that's something, that you could add under the personal information section. So thank you, Sarah, for that.
All right. So if we go on to the next section, with objective. So objective is basically a summary of the candidate's strengths and what they bring to the table. So particular areas that you want to work in could be mentioned here. And an initial eye catcher, but it shouldn't be more than 2 to 3 lines at the beginning.
Do you have any example, maybe, Sarah, that you can share on objective and, like maybe good ones?
I think there should be an example that's displayed through the template that's shared as well. So they can use something along those lines and always amend, obviously, depending on the role that they're applying for as well.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you, Sarah.
So the next section that you should begin with would be your work experience. Our advice is to always start with your most current role. For candidates who are already working, they should begin this section with their most recent job title, organization that they're working in, and the current duration. So for the responsibilities, we'll try to limit this to 4 to 6 bullet points of your achievements in this role, so what you've been doing. And the general advice is not to put the entire job description, but instead to highlight your strengths. So, for example, if you were in a sales role and you had targets, you can mention those targets that you had and how you've achieved them, which sort of methods were taken for that achievement. In addition to that, there's an example for a customer service role, and you can mention any assistance and the support that you provide in that sense. Yeah.
Okay, I think that's really clear. Now I've got a question for you, Sarah. We actually, a lot of people with no experience, so maybe fresh graduates, so they could come from universities, they could come from colleges, or maybe from special schools. Very often, actually, they ask us what to put in that section when they don't have actually a job experience. So what would you suggest? Because I believe that leaving that section blank is not actually advised. So what would you suggest instead?
Okay, sure. So if you're new to the job market, we just begin that your CV typically should not be more than 1 page. So whoever is reading your CV at that time, the recruiter would be aware that you're a fresh graduate and would expect very minimal work experience. So I think even though this concerns people a lot of times, it's not things you should be worried about. So there are many different roles in most organizations for different levels. And in this instance, what a candidate can focus on instead is on their academic degrees and achievements. Yeah. So if
Okay.
you're a graduate, you can focus on some internships that you may have had, or anything you've worked on in your degree, certain projects that you're proud of, are things you can highlight in this area.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. So I
Okay.
guess we can now move on to the education section, unless we have any questions.
Sure. So the next section on education is a similar structure to what you would have on your work experience. Always start with the most recent degree and ensure your name of the university is there, plus the year. If you have no work experience, then the most important thing for a recruiter at this point would be to see your overall GPA. So recruiters don't necessarily need a breakdown of the grades that you have in each particular subject. Unless it's specifically linked to a role that you are applying for, then it's best to keep it as the overall GPA.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. I think this section is actually pretty clear because even if some people haven't gone to university or maybe to college, I think anyone has been to some sort of schools. And I think if I refer to any special schools in the UAE, I know that they wouldn't have a GPA, but I think what we see very often from CVs, very often we see actually missing information when it comes to even the dates of when did they graduate or when did they attend that school, and even
Yeah.
the name of the schools. So thank you, Sarah, for your information. So I think the next section is skills. And again, what we see from our experience in the Careers Network, sometimes we see either no skills or we see way too much skills. So can you just tell us about that skills section and what exactly is acceptable? How much skills can we include, and what are the different type of skills that actually people can include?
Okay, sure. So under the skills, you can cover things that are beyond your academic and professional qualifications. So you can input languages that you speak, and obviously we would advise that you mention your proficiency level. So whether you're fluent or you can just read or speak. Yeah, so include those levels. In terms of your personal skills, such as communication skills or team building, whichever it is, we would say to stick to 3 to 5 and not provide a very long list in that section.
So can we have in that section interpersonal skills, like maybe communication and attention to details, and can we then have more professional skills? Because some of them, some people would have special skills when it comes to programming or Excel or PowerPoint. So how would you divide that section?
No, so that is where you would be able to input all of those skills, regardless whether they're professional or personal skills. So Excel, proficiency, any programs, as well as personal skills.
Perfect. Thank you, Sarah.
Okay. So finally, the section that we have would be the general information. And what we recommend here is anything else that you want a recruiter to be aware of. So for example, if you have a professional certification, such as the CFA for an accountant or if you're in finance, or a CIPD if you're in HR, you would mention that over here. And if you do not want to mention your disability at the beginning under the personal information, then it's optional, but you can highlight whether you require any wheelchair access for your role or special keyboards or other equipment in case you have visual impairments. This would be the area that you highlight any of your accommodation requirements. Additionally, people sometimes like to add their hobbies, and you can add that in here, but try to limit it as well to 2 or 3 in this section. And I think just to finalize, some of the most important tips to remember would be to ensure that there are no grammar errors, no spelling errors or typos. And most importantly, not to lie on any of the information that's provided on your CV. That tends to come out at the next stage during an interview.
Thank you, Sarah. So I'm just looking at my phone now, and we're getting a couple of questions. So the first question is, if you have worked in various companies, how do you summarize in 2 pages your CV?
Okay, so if we move back to the section on work experience, a recruiter's the focus point that they would have when they look at your CV would be the first experience, your most current role. And as you move along to other roles, to your least current roles, you can start to have shorter sentences. This could be just the job title and the organization and the date that you were there, because the importance sort of gets less the further back it is in the experience. Yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. I've got another question actually from someone on Facebook that is actually asking if we could share any resume formats. So
sure. Yeah. So at the end of the section, we've provided certain templates that are available online. So these are some free templates that you can use. There are certain websites mentioned that they can follow through from there.
Okay, perfect, Sarah. We've got another one, which is it good to make the CV colorful?
Okay. So we would advise if that reflects your personality. Say you're applying for a creative role, something in that requires a lot of creativity and that shows your personality, then yes. But try and limit it to 2 colors so that it's not too colorful. Yeah, 1 and 2.
Colorful.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Sarah. So I'm gonna look at a few more questions. One is about going back to the skills. So how many skills do we require to show? And if you can please describe some of the skills.
Okay. So like we mentioned a little while ago, we would recommend 3 to 5. So I've seen certain CVs where people have up to 10 skills. And like I said at the start, for many roles, there are so many CVs that come into recruiters, into organizations. So to try and keep things simple, straight to the point, we would limit it to 3 to 5. And the skills that you can mention could be anything from communication skills or leadership skills, attention to detail, certain things that reflect their personalities.
Thank you, Sarah. So alongside with the skills, we have another question on Facebook. How important is the hobbies section to the employer, and how many hobbies should we include?
Yes. So the hobbies section, I think, also helps during the interview in case it gets a little quiet. It's a topic of conversation that they can pick up from there. You can mention about 2 to 3, and it shows that the employee or the candidate, sorry, is interested in areas other than just work. So it shows their personality slightly. If they're a professional golf player, that's quite interesting to know in your hobby as well. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. I'm getting another question about, should the person write the exact disability or more general? So as an example, someone maybe with Down syndrome,
Mm-hmm.
do you recommend to write just cognitive disability, or would you actually recommend to have Down syndrome written?
Okay. I think obviously it depends on what they're comfortable with writing as well, but it's probably advisable to write exactly what the disability is. And under the general information section, if the employer needs to know of any support that a person requires, they can go into more detail on that section and maybe just write the main disability under professional information at the top of the section.
Perfect. Yeah. Thank you, Sarah. I think it makes sense. We're getting another question from LinkedIn, and it's about the cover letter. So how important is there a cover letter alongside with the CV?
Okay, so our recommendation is obviously to include the objective instead of a cover letter. Cover letters, so the objective would just limit it to a few lines rather than having a long cover letter that goes into paragraphs, yeah? But this obviously also differs between different candidates.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. We're getting another very interesting question from LinkedIn, talking about, we talked earlier about formatting when you mentioned 2 pages, no more than 2 pages, or maybe 1 page if someone is a fresh graduate. So the question is about when it comes to formatting, do we need to stick to Word document or PowerPoint, or can we be more creative with a CV, such as video, or maybe more like an online or digital type of CV?
Okay, so usually if you would apply your CV, if you would submit for a role in a certain organization, you would have to upload it. And that uploading is usually of a Word document, and it would restrict submitting other documents, right? So I personally have never seen a video CV. I think that's an interesting concept to think about, but so far, usually it's restricted to Word documents. And that Word document can be as creative as you want it to be. And you can follow the templates on the links as well. So you can see many different styles of templates that you can use. It is quite interesting, though, to maybe in the future they could take videos as well as CVs.
Yeah, so actually that's what we've seen more and more in the Careers Network with our candidates, especially for the candidates that are coming from special schools. There are a couple of schools in the UAE now that are actually helping their students to come up with videos instead of writing CVs. So I guess that would be good if in the future private sectors could accommodate this type of format.
What they apply on the,
yes. So we're getting another question, Sarah, about date of birth and the nationality. So do we need to mention the date of birth and the age?
It's not necessary. If an employer wants to know, they can contact you and always get more information. From the nationality side, like I mentioned, you can just put the passport that you hold, but you wouldn't need to go into detail on your passport number and other details mentioned in that document.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Sarah. So we're getting another question from LinkedIn, actually. So it's actually about you and your role, how HR managed for the same job, hundreds of CV received, and what are the critical things that HR look for?
Okay, that's an interesting question. So to tackle the first question that you said, when we have multiple CVs,
Yeah.
So what most organizations have in place at the moment are application tracking systems. So when you have a job description posted on a website, the way that they filter through those CVs is through an automated system. So you may have certain keywords that they'll use if you were looking for a relationship manager and or a salesperson. You would put in those keywords and it sort of links to CVs that are related to the job description. Yeah. I'm sorry, Elodie, could you repeat the second part of that question?
Yeah, so the second part of the question was about what are the most critical things that actually HR look for?
Okay, so apart from the professional experience, I'm assuming, they're also looking for people who have the right attitude that fits with the values of that organization, right? So we can talk here about your from a personal side, their ambition, their willingness to learn, and they're trying to find a person who has the right fit with the culture of that organization. Obviously, not everything can be seen just on the CV, but you can try and mention those through the objective section and following the first, yeah, sorry?
No, sorry, go ahead, Sarah.
Following the screening stage, if you pass that first screening stage, then they can get into more details during the interview, be it a phone interview or face-to-face.
Thank you, Sarah. So we're getting another question about if you had lost your job, what should you write on your CV? If you were made redundant or if you left your job, what should you write on your CV?
Okay. So you wouldn't necessarily need to write that then. So if we take it from the aspect of if you've been in a role for a few months, say 1 month or 2 months, then my advice would be to not put that on the CV, because there wouldn't be a lot of experience maybe that you would have gained in that short amount of time. Yeah. But if you were there for years and then unfortunately if you were made redundant, you still have a lot to input into that. You can go into more detail of why you left that role during the interview, but you can still mention it in the same structure where you would have your title, you'd have your responsibilities that you learned during that time, and your key achievements.
Okay, perfect. So just actually on the key achievement, I just received the question. If the candidate so if you have participated in a national team, so the example is for the Special Olympics last year and won a gold medal, is it good to mention it? And where should you mention on your CV?
Yes. Okay. I think that would be very good to mention. Those are things that showcase your personality, your interests outside of a professional setting as well. And you should probably mention that if it's within a hobby or under general information would be the area that you can put that in. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. So we're getting another question from LinkedIn. If you have multiple nationalities, so you've mentioned before to mention the nationality. What if you have a couple of nationalities? What would you suggest?
Okay. So I've seen that as well. So you can just put you can put that nationality and just dash the next. So whichever passport holder you are, you'll put in those passports that you have, and it's completely fine.
Thank you, Sarah. Another very interesting question from LinkedIn. Is it a good idea to have multiple CVs and to customize them to the job itself?
Yes. Obviously, without lying on the information that is available on your CV. But like I said earlier, organizations tend to look for CVs through a tracking system. And so if you cater your CV and you tailor it to different roles, it would hopefully help your CV be picked up from those systems and increase your chances of being noticed. As long as the information that you mention is accurate, then you should ideally tailor your CV slightly to different roles to show how you're more suited and how you fit best with that role.
So is this where maybe the objective section would play a role, where you could customize the objective? Okay.
Exactly. Yes. So say you want to move from one area that you're in to a slightly different area that you might not have worked at before, you can always mention that through your objective that you're looking to move into a different area and how your skills or your experience has helped you to then move to a different role in a different section. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you, Sarah. I've got one last question for now, which is regarding the picture that you mentioned earlier. Should it be a serious / professional picture, or can the picture be a bit more creative?
So we would advise that it's limited to a professional photo. If you are applying for a role that maybe is more on the creative side and you want to enhance your CV by putting a lot of colors showcasing your personality, but as long as it's to a limit, it would have to be professional. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much, Sarah. So I'm not getting any further questions at the moment. One last one, actually, from LinkedIn. Do we need to mention the year during which you worked against each experience?
Yes. Yes, 100%.
100%, huh? And I think in their CV templates, it is written from and to.
Yes, you want to guide the recruiter so that they can see. You want to make it easy for them to understand where you are currently and where you were at different stages. So from the date that you've started in that role and whether you're currently there or the end date that you've had in that role.
Perfect. Thank you, Sarah. So again, that's what we mentioned earlier. This is not a platform on open door for opportunities within Emirates NBD. The CV templates, as well as the summary of all the tips that Sarah have been sharing, are all available on the website, on Careers Network's website page. Sarah, is there any other tips that we may have missed, maybe from the question, or anything else from your side?
I don't think so. I hope this session was valuable and that everyone has gained a bit of tips that they can use to structure their own CVs.
Great, thank you, Sarah. So as Sarah just mentioned, we are coming to an end. So thank you, Sarah, for your time and for sharing your expertise. Thank you all for joining us today. If you have any additional questions, please post them and our team will get back to you. If you wish to get in touch with the Careers Network team, please do so. Visit our website on Emirates MBD Careers Network website page and submit your contact details and we will get in touch with you. As mentioned earlier, the Careers Network is a CSR program where we are supporting the inclusion of people of determination, connecting them with potential employers. Thank you again. Please stay safe and remember, together we will conquer. Thank you very much all.
Thank you.
Thank you.